The other aspect of it is you're still having to live. So you're still in your accumulation phase. So you have all the forces coming against you when you think that your storehouse is your now money versus your future money.
Welcome, friends, to Investing in Faith, where faith meets finance in the most practical ways. In a world that feels more uncertain by the day, there's power in bringing together spiritual guidance, practical application, and intentional living. And that's what we're here to do. I'm Bradford Hancock, joined with Michael Wallin, and we're honored to be your guides on this journey. As a certified financial planner and the managing partner of Optimize Advisory Services, Michael serves financial, tax, and estate clients across the nation, bringing clarity through biblical principles. After this episode, go to investinginfaith.com to connect and learn more. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the 3 phases of the financial life cycle. All right. Well, here we are again today. Michael, how you doing?
Doing great. Great to be here. Thank you, Bradford. It's going to be a great topic today. I think it's going to maybe set the stage for a lot of people that are kind of lost in what is finances, what does financial, stewardship mean? Where am I in this process? Everybody is a little bit different. So maybe we'll give a little context to that, maybe put a little bit of the boundaries around it. So as you mentioned, today's episode, we're going to be talking about the 3 phases of the financial life cycle. And the first phase is the accumulation phase. And then the second phase is the preservation and income phase. And then the third phase is the distribution phase. So let's give a little framework around each of those. So if we're looking at the accumulation phase, typically that is a time period in a person's life, maybe between ages 18 to 65, 67. People are working a little longer today, so they still may be accumulating.
It's a long phase.
It's a long phase. This is the phase where we're setting aside resources, but there's a lot of things that happen during that time period in people's lives. It could be a time period where they may get their first job or they start exploring what their career is going to be. It could be a process of receiving extra education. If somebody either goes to a trade school or they go to a university or college to get a more in-depth study in a career that they want to make. So there's a commitment to that. It could be the phase of which they may meet that love of their life and have marriage and then children and they go through all the stages of that. It could be a process of where they may have aging parents, where now those parents may become dependent upon them. So it is a long process. It's a time when we're spending our hours working to earn an income to be able to pay for the provisions. It could be the time period where they buy a home. But in that, they still have to be thinking about the next phase of life, which is the preservation and income. So in the accumulation phase, it's really dual. You're taking money that you're setting aside for the future, but you're also looking at making sure that you have enough resources to live the lifestyle that you dream of and that you're wanting to live today. And so then we go into that preservation and income phase, which is phase 2. And that's really using what you've put aside and making sure that it's enough resources that allows you to live comfortably, that you can thrive during retirement and not just survive. Okay. And so then the third phase is once our life ends, how do we take and create that inheritance that goes to our loved ones? And that becomes the distribution phase. And so really what we're going to dig into today, because we can't cover all of this in today's show, but we will come back in subsequent episodes and talk about the next 2 phases, but we're going to talk about the accumulation phase today. And when I'm talking to clients, this comes from Genesis 41.
Okay, and we were talking about that a little bit this morning, so let me just read that real quick. This is Genesis 41, 35 and 36. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by famine.
Absolutely. And in that passage, there's three pieces that really come or is emphasized to me. The first emphasis in that is foresight. That passage gave insight into the foresight of what the future is going to be. And we're going to come back to that piece in just a moment. But the second piece is stewardship. What do they do during that time period in stewardship of the resources that God has blessed them with? And then the third piece of it is the balance between the investing of that, putting it aside with that balance of God's provision to accumulate it, to grow it. So making sure that it's going to be there in God's will of providing in the future. So we can really pull a lot out of that one scripture. Mm-hmm. And if we're looking at the wisdom of foresight, I think during the accumulation phase, one of the areas that I would say number one area that where individuals miss is that when they start working, they go in, their employer, or if they're self-employed, they start saying, well, I'm going to put money aside for the future. And that's going to be great. It could be a 401k, a 403b. It could be a SEP IRA. It could be a Roth IRA. It's being some account that we're putting this money into. Now, that's great that you're doing it, but if you don't know the amount of what you need in the future, this was the foresight. When we knew the timeline in the scripture, it just told us for 7 years, put money aside so that it can provide for 7 years of famine. Well, that was a planning process. That was foresight. So even individuals, when they're first starting out, I would encourage them to sit with a financial planner, sit with somebody and let that plan be built. What do you want your destination to be in the future? Where do you want whatever action you're taking today? It should be for a purpose for what that future time period is going to be.
You can make adjustments on that as you go, right? Because no one knows exactly what the future is going to hold, but you can have your plan. We're going to head due north, but we might have to go like a little bit east sometimes to go back north.
Just like we talked about in some of our previous episodes, if you get a detour in life, you got to know how to get back to the plumb line. And so, an individual, it may be single, may have a plumb line today that's going to take them to this destination. But what happens when other things happen in their life? They meet the love of their life. Now they get married. Now they have children. Yes, your plan has to be flexible enough to modify and change to what that, but that comes in from sitting down with a trusted advisor that can give you the best guidance to give you the highest probability of success in achieving your objectives when that time period of dependency comes on what you have set aside, which is phase 2 of the financial life cycle.
So what are the steps you take in your practice to help guide people through this process?
Well, and it is a process. And the first thing is we use a tool called Life Arc Plan that is designed for data gathering, which really gathers all the pieces of information that is necessary to be considered in building the plan. Once we gather that information, then we identify what the future is going to be that they've always dreamed of. What is that ideal retirement look like? And then we back into where they are today and say, these are the number of years that we have. So when we're looking at accumulation, there's two things that's happening. I am making a contribution as a participant in my retirement. How much of the resources, how much of the grain do I need to be setting aside today? And then what is my expectancy based upon risk profile, risk tolerance? How much risk do I want to expose that grain to for it to multiply?
Okay.
And then we guide and we look at that on a periodic basis. Sometimes it could be a quarterly review. Sometimes it could be 6 months. Sometimes it could be a year. When we're talking to clients that may be younger in age, they may be able to have a higher risk profile, meaning that they can be exposed to more risk, which will yield them more return because they have a longer period of time. They have a greater recovery period. Okay. If we're working with individuals that may be closer to the age of retirement or their desired retiring time from work, then at that point, we may not be able to expose them to as much risk due to the possibility of a market correction that we've all experienced back in 2001, 2008, 2015, 2022, time periods, 2020.
Not every 7 years.
Yeah.
Which is what we just read.
Yeah, it's very biblical when we look at 7-year periods of where we see corrections happening. And what you can't afford is one of those corrections happening, a famine coming along during a time period that is inopportune for you, because now you're dependent upon that money, but you have less grain in the storehouse.
So in the accumulation years, how do you strike the right balance as a client?
It is a lifestyle balance. There is a balance between preparation and trust in God's provision. So let's think about the day in life of an individual in the accumulation phase. We'll just use a married individual, 2 kids at home, mortgage, maybe a couple of car payments. They're working hard every day. Sometimes it may be very difficult to meet ends meet.
Single income?
Could be single income, could be dual income. It's according to where they are, what area of the country they live in, whether they're living maybe in a rural area or maybe in more of an urban area. All of those things play in. So when we're looking at preparation, you have to have a plan. It has to be a balance of how much I'm bringing in and how much do I set aside. Scripture tells us our first fruits or tithes. So once that is taken out, the second area that individuals should really look at to really be in balance of stewardship is that they take the next fruits and they move that over into a retirement. Always fund your retirement before you're looking at your other expenses on your budget, because we know Scripture tells us to set aside, as you read earlier, the grain for 7 years, a provision of it, so that it provided. So we've got to do that. That is scriptural to us.
So even before a mortgage?
Before a mortgage, before you calculate how much you can afford in a mortgage, before you calculate what your spending habits are going to be, do those things that are biblical first. Tithing, and then setting aside for your retirement, because that day is going to be coming.
Do you feel like the Western culture has that backwards?
I do. I think consumerism is always after that disposable income. I think it goes after the tithe. There's many people we meet today, and they say, well, I would love to tithe. However, at the end of the month, I don't have anything left over. Well, that's in reverse order. Actually, we're supposed to tithe first, and then we build our lifestyle off of the balance of that. And I would say that tithing and then setting aside for retirement is actually a 1A, 1B in the process. And then we build our lifestyle off of the balance of that. And that becomes the balance in there, because if I'm setting it aside, I know I'm going to have that towards my retirement. I'm allowing that money to accumulate over a period of time, and I'm not having to guess or be fearful of what my retirement is going to be like. How am I going to be able to provide? Mm-hmm. Keeping that in check also helps you to understand that you're not using your future dollars in today's dollars, living a lifestyle that really is outside of what you can afford.
What about when you have one of those life moments that happens, maybe you face unemployment for a period of time? I mean, how do you counsel your clients on that as far as within that plan?
That's a great question. We should always ensure as much as we can against that. So if you're self-employed, I highly recommend individuals to have short-term and long-term disability. If you're working at a place of employment, you're working for someone else, if they offer short-term or long-term disability, you always have unemployment that right. You can fall back on. That is an insurance policy to protect you against that peril in life as well. But always insure against that unknown risk. That way, that provides, and you're not having to go to your retirement and pull that money in earlier. I typically don't see that. That's not the one that concerns me the most. The one that does concern me the most is when adult children that may not have everything in balance comes back to their parents, which may be approaching that latter part of their accumulation phase, or maybe even into the early second phase, which is preservation and income, and they need their parent to bail them out. And they take a large amount of that grain out of the storehouse and provide to the child, the adult child, to get them out of an uncomfortable situation. Many times, and they do it because they love them. Parents love their children. They always want to get them up, dust them off, get rid of the scrapes, put a Band-Aid on it. However, I realize that might not be what our listeners want to hear, but sometimes we're in challenges. Romans 8 tells us that sometimes we are tried so that we learn faith, hope, and patience. So sometimes we may be going through a Roman 8 and our parents want to go to Genesis 41 and take from the storehouse to get our children out of Romans 8. And that might not be exactly what God's wanting them to do.
And it also opens up the parents to some potential tax implications too, right?
It could. It very well could cause IRMA. And we'll be talking on a later show about who IRMA is. But many times when we take too much money out of retirement, there's means-tested benefits that we have. Could be your Social Security, could be your Medicare premium, anything that can be impacted based upon your taxable income. Parents don't consider that often of what those negative impacts can be when they're taking that money out of those retirement accounts to bail their children out, how much negative impact that's going to have on them as well. Not just in taxation, but additional premium cost on their Medicare or causing a portion of their Social Security to now become taxable.
Okay. Kind of in that same vein, you've been doing this for 30 years. So are you seeing more of the children coming back to their parents later in life and asking for help? Is that an increase right now, or has it always been a constant? What's your feel for that?
It's really always been a constant. We are seeing that COVID had a lot of impact on individuals that had expenses, things that happened they weren't expecting. None of us expected COVID. None of us expected the impact, not just with people being out of work, but the quarantining as well as the supply chain issues. All of those had an impact that was unprecedented. And we did see quite a few people at that time going to their parents or invading their own retirement, invading their own storehouse, and really depleting that grain storage that they had
and
for the future.
They don't have enough runway to make that back up.
They don't. Time value factor. The time value calculation is that time period of being able to store it based upon the amount of risk exposure to help you get to a targeted goal. And when you have a short runway, you can't put enough money aside. You can't take and expose your money to that amount of risk that's needed to potentially get you there. The other aspect of it is you're still having to live. So you're still in your accumulation phase. So you have all the forces coming against you when you think that your storehouse is your now money versus your future money.
Okay. Well, we've covered quite a bit of information about this. Is there anything you want to say in closing?
The key thing is meet with a trusted financial planner. Meet with somebody who can build you a plan that, as you asked earlier, that has the flexibility, that we can expand in that we want to make sure that you are on the best path that gives you the highest probability of success. You want to meet with somebody that is not a salesperson, but actually has a process that has been proven over a period of time that you can be applied into that process and get your destination, get a plan, get something that you've got now a plumb line that you could be measured against that allows you the highest probability for that success.
And where can people go to find out more?
For individuals to know more about the process and how we could help them, they're welcome to reach out to us at the office at 855-378-1806. Again, 855-378-1806. Or They could go on to investedinfaith.com, connect there, learn more, follow our show, share it with others. If you find that the information that we're sharing today had a nugget of insight that you can be benefited from, it may help others that you know as well. So share our website. We greatly appreciate that. But give our office a call. Let us sit down with you and listen to you first and foremost. Understand what your goals, dreams, and aspirations are. Understand where your fears or concerns are, and let us help build a path to your destination and give you a little peace of mind, give you some certainty during these uncertain times.
And it's not only financial advice, but you have the tax and estate planning as well.
It's all incorporated into one complete package.
Okay. All right. Well, Michael, thank you for your time.
Thank you,
today.
Bradford.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Optavise Advisory Services, LLC, Optavise, is an investment advisory firm registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, under the Investment Advisors Act of 1940. Registration as an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. The oral and written communications of an advisor provide you with information about which you determine to hire or retain an advisor. For more information, visit https://advisor.info.sec.gov and search for our firm name. This presentation has been provided for informational purposes only and is not intended as legal or investment advice or a recommendation of any particular security or strategy. The investment strategy and themes discussed herein may be unsuitable for investors depending on their specific investment objectives and financial situation. Information obtained from third-party sources is believed to be reliable, though its accuracy is not guaranteed. Opinions expressed in this commentary reflect subjective judgments of the author based on conditions at the time of publication and are subject to change without notice. Past performance is not indicative of future results.